The smell of lemon polish and freshly washed sheets filled the narrow corridors of the Ocean Pearl Hotel every morning. Luna moved through those hallways like a quiet melody, barely noticed yet impossible to forget. Her small frame carried a weight much larger than her body could hold, but her spirit somehow never broke. She was a black girl of 21 with skin that glowed like polished mahogany under the soft light of dawn, and eyes that carried the reflection of countless silent dreams. Every day began the same way. At 5:30 a.m., her old alarm clock buzzed in her shared apartment across the street from the hotel. She'd wake up before the sun had even dared to rise, boil a kettle of cheap instant coffee, and stare at the cracked mirror in her small room. Sometimes she'd smile at her reflection, just to remind herself that she was still here, still alive, still trying. Her mother used to say, "Luna, you were named after the moon because you glow even in darkness." That line stayed with her. It was her quiet armor against the world. The Ocean Pearl Hotel wasn't luxurious for her. To the guests, it was a place of rest and luxury, with velvet curtains and golden chandeliers. But for Luna, it was a battlefield, one she fought on with a mop, a cleaning cart, and a heart that refused to give up. She had been working there for 3 years, ever since her mother passed away and her younger brother was taken in by relatives in another city. Luna never had the money to study art like she wanted, so instead she found art in the symmetry of freshly made beds, the shine of polished glass, and the rhythm of her footsteps echoing in the empty corridors. Most guests didn't even look at her. To them, she was invisible, just another uniform, another nameless worker blending into the background. But Luna never let that bother her. She had a secret talent for finding stories in the little things people left behind. A lipstick-stained teacup told her someone had cried last night. A forgotten tie meant a rushed morning and maybe a broken heart. She believed every room carried a whisper and she was the only one who could hear it. There was an old cleaning lady named Rosa who often said, "Girl, stop dreaming. This place will eat your soul if you keep looking for beauty in it." But Luna would just smile. "Then I'll feed it beauty until it chokes," she'd reply softly. And Rosa would shake her head, half annoyed, half amused. Her favorite time of day was the early morning, just before the guests started waking up. The hotel was silent then, not dead silent, but peacefully alive. The hum of the air conditioner, the soft clinking of distant plates, and the rhythmic roll of her cleaning cart. It all formed a kind of music she could dance to. Sometimes she'd hum quietly, pretending the hotel was her stage and the polished floor her audience. But beneath her calm routine, Luna carried a quiet loneliness. The city she lived in was busy, cold, and often cruel. She had no friends except for Rosa and the stray cat that sometimes followed her to work. Her phone was filled with unsent messages, to her brother, to her late mother, to herself. She often wished someone would notice her, not because she was useful, but because she was her. There was a corner of the hotel lobby she loved most, near a large window where the morning light poured in like liquid gold. On her short breaks, she'd sit there, sip her coffee, and sketch on old receipts. Her sketches were rough but soulful, portraits of the guests she'd never spoken to, imagined lives, and sometimes just faceless figures with eyes full of light. Drawing was her secret rebellion, her way of saying, "I exist, I feel, I dream." One morning, while she was arranging flowers in the lobby vase, she noticed something unusual. The manager and a few senior staff members were whispering near the reception desk. They looked tense, adjusting their ties, straightening their jackets as if expecting someone very important. Luna didn't ask questions. She had learned long ago that people like her weren't meant to know the hotel's secrets. But she couldn't help overhearing words like security, confidential, and VIP guest. When the clock struck 9, a line of black cars stopped outside the hotel entrance. Men in suits stepped out, followed by a tall, silent figure in a dark overcoat. His presence shifted the air. Even without speaking, he commanded attention, like a storm that doesn't thunder but you still know is coming. Everyone bowed slightly, and the manager personally escorted him inside. Luna stood frozen near the elevator, holding a bucket of cleaning cloths. For a brief second, the man's eyes met hers, calm, unreadable, and strangely sad, and just like that he was gone, whisked away to the top floor, which had been sealed off for private use. Luna didn't know who he was, but something in his gaze lingered with her long after he disappeared. It wasn't fear or even curiosity. It was a feeling she couldn't name, like recognizing a melody you've never heard before. That night, as she closed her small apartment window and lay in bed, she thought about those eyes again. There had been something familiar about them, as if they'd seen the same kind of loneliness she lived with every day. She didn't know that her quiet world was about to change forever. She didn't know that the silent guest in room 801 would soon rewrite the story of her life, not with words but with silence. Outside, the moon rose high over the city, pale, patient, and watching. Just like Luna. The next morning, the Ocean Pearl Hotel felt different, heavier somehow, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. There was a hush in the air, a kind of reverence mixed with unease. Everyone moved faster than usual. The bellboys whispered. The receptionists stood straighter, and even Rosa stopped gossiping. Something, or rather someone, important had arrived. Rumors spread like spilled coffee through the staff quarters. Some said the guest was a politician hiding from scandal. Others whispered he was a film producer scouting secret locations. But the truth, as always, was stranger than fiction. His name was never officially mentioned. The reservation list simply said, Mr. KT, Japan. But when the convoy of sleek black cars appeared again in the hotel driveway, even the most indifferent workers peeked through the glass doors. The man stepped out slowly, his shoes making no sound on the marble floor. He was tall, dressed in a dark, perfectly tailored suit that absorbed the morning light instead of reflecting it. His hair was silver at the temples, not from age but from experience. His eyes, sharp yet distant, carried a kind of silence that could command a room without uttering a single word. He bowed politely to the manager, and that small gesture made even the arrogant guests lower their gaze. The staff quickly learned 3 things about him. He spoke very little. He never allowed housekeeping into his suite when he was present. He never smiled, and except once when he stood alone by the window. Luna watched all of this quietly. She wasn't supposed to be near the top floor. Only trusted senior staff were allowed, but fate had its own plans. That evening, when one of the senior maids fell sick, Luna was assigned to replace her for the cleaning rounds on the 8th floor, the floor reserved entirely for him. Her heart raced as she pushed her cleaning cart toward the elevator. Every sound, the squeak of the wheels, the hum of the lights, felt louder than usual. The elevator doors opened, revealing a long corridor lined with modern paintings and golden lamps. The air smelled faintly of sandalwood and rain. It was quiet, too quiet. Room 801 stood at the end of the hallway. The door was half open, just enough for Luna to see inside. She hesitated. The manager's warning echoed in her mind. Do your job and leave. Don't speak to the guest. But curiosity is a kind of hunger, and Luna had always been starving for something deeper than rules. She took a slow step forward. Inside, the suite looked less like a hotel room and more like a sanctuary. Minimalist design, soft Japanese music playing in the background, and on the desk, a small wooden box filled with delicate paper cranes. The scent of green tea floated in the air. Luna froze when she realized the man was there, sitting by the large window. His back was to her, yet somehow he seemed aware of her presence. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The city lights reflected off the window, framing him in a quiet glow. Luna wanted to apologize, to retreat, but before she could, his voice broke the silence, deep, calm, with an accent smooth as water. You can come in, he said. She stepped in cautiously, her shoes barely making a sound on the carpet. I'm sorry, sir. I didn't know you were... It's fine, he interrupted softly. You're new. Luna blinked, surprised he even noticed. She nodded, clutching her duster nervously. Yes, sir? Just helping tonight, he didn't reply. Instead, he turned a page in the notebook lying before him. From where Luna stood, she could see small sketches, lines of a face, a child maybe. There was something fragile about the drawing, something heartbreakingly gentle. After a while, he said, almost to himself, You remind me of someone. Luna didn't know what to say, so she said nothing. She simply smiled, a small, warm smile that reached her eyes. And for the briefest second, he smiled back. It wasn't a big smile, just a flicker, but it felt like sunlight breaking through clouds after a long storm. When she finished her cleaning and turned to leave, she noticed a folded paper crane resting on the table near the door, the same kind she'd seen earlier in the box, She hesitated, then asked quietly, "Did you make these?" "Yes," he said. "For peace," she nodded. "They're beautiful." He didn't answer, but as she left, she heard him whisper something under his breath, words she couldn't quite catch. It sounded like a prayer. That night, back in her small apartment, Luna couldn't stop thinking about him. The way he spoke, the sadness in his voice, the gentle way he folded those tiny cranes. There was something haunting about him, as if he were made of memories instead of flesh and bone. The next morning, when she returned to clean again, she found a surprise waiting. On the desk beside the wooden box was a single origami bird with a message written on one wing. "Thank you." Luna's heart skipped a beat. It was just 2 words, but it felt like a secret only she was meant to understand. She didn't know his name, or why he was here, or what shadows followed him across oceans. But for the first time in years, Luna felt seen. Not as a maid, not as a shadow in someone else's story, but as Luna. And somewhere, in that silent exchange between 2 strangers, one broken, one brave, something began to heal. Days passed, but the memory of that single paper crane lingered in Luna's mind like a melody she couldn't forget. It wasn't just a thank you note, it was something deeper, something wordless that spoke directly to her soul. Every morning when she returned to the top floor, she felt the air shift around room 801. It was no longer just another door. It was a world of silence, secrets, and unspoken warmth. The billionaire, still known only as Mr. KT, had become a ghost in whispers among the hotel staff. He rarely left his room, except sometimes late at night when the city slept and the corridors were empty. Rosa claimed she once saw him standing in the rain outside, looking up at the moon for nearly an hour, not moving, not blinking. "Strange man," she had muttered, but Luna only smiled faintly. She didn't think he was strange, just lonely. Every day, Luna would quietly tidy his suite. She never touched the wooden box of paper cranes, though sometimes she noticed new ones added, each folded perfectly, each a different color. One morning, when she entered the room, she found a small note lying beside the newest crane. The handwriting was neat, almost fragile. "The world is quieter when you're kind." Luna's breath caught in her chest. It wasn't addressed to anyone, but she knew it was meant for her. She smiled softly, picked up a piece of hotel stationery, and wrote back in small letters, "Kindness makes the world less lonely." She folded the note and left it beside his tea set before leaving the room. It was a small act, one she didn't think would be noticed. But the next morning, another paper crane waited for her. This one blue with the words "Agreed." And just like that, an unspoken conversation began. They never talked face to face. Instead, they spoke through notes, through cranes, through gestures so small they might have gone unnoticed by anyone else. Luna would leave gentle lines of thought. "The sky looked sad today," or "I think people who smile less often have deeper hearts." And in return, she'd find words that carried the quiet wisdom of someone who had seen the world break. Sometimes, silence is the loudest answer, or, not all storms come to destroy, some come to clear the air. Through this secret exchange, Luna began to sense that Mr. KT carried a wound, not one visible to the eye, but the kind that leaves its mark on the soul. His loneliness mirrored her own, but there was something heavier in his, like grief that had learned how to breathe. One evening, while cleaning his desk, Luna noticed a photo frame turned face down. She hesitated, then gently lifted it. It was an old photograph of a little girl, maybe 6 or 7, with bright eyes and 2 pigtails. She was holding an origami bird, smiling wide. Behind her stood a younger version of Mr. KT, his hand resting protectively on her shoulder. Luna immediately set the frame back down, her heart aching with unspoken empathy. The next day, she found a note. Just one line. You looked at the picture, her stomach dropped. She thought he might be angry, but underneath that first sentence there was another. She would have liked you. Luna sat down for a moment, holding the note in trembling hands. For a second, the hotel around her faded away. The noise, the chatter, the endless footsteps, and all she could feel was the echo of that sentence. She would have liked you. That night, Luna didn't sleep. She stayed awake sketching. A little girl with pigtails holding a bird in her hand. standing beside a man whose eyes carried both love and sorrow. When she finished, she folded the sketch gently and brought it to the hotel the next morning. She placed it on his desk, unsure if she was overstepping, but her heart told her to trust the feeling. By the next day, the drawing was gone. And in its place, a new origami birdie, pure white, with the words, "Thank you for remembering her." It was then Luna understood. The cranes weren't decorations. They were memories, each one folded for the girl in the photograph. Each one a prayer for peace. From that day on, she no longer saw Mr. KT as just a mysterious guest. To her, he was a father frozen in grief, a man trying to find meaning in silence. She made it her quiet mission to bring him a little light, through her notes, her drawings, her presence. Sometimes when she entered the room, she'd find the window open and the curtains swaying softly in the breeze. On those days, she liked to imagine that his daughter's spirit visited him, or maybe both of them, carried by the wind. What neither of them knew was that their fragile exchange was healing something in both hearts, his grief, her emptiness. Two strangers bound by loss, connected through kindness. Luna didn't need to hear his story to understand it. Some stories are not told in words. They're felt in the pauses, in the gestures, in the spaces between what's said and unsaid. And somewhere in those spaces, between folded cranes and quiet smiles, the silent guest began to come alive again. It didn't take long for the whispers to begin. Staff started noticing how often Luna was assigned to the top floor, how her shift always seemed to end near room 801. Some said she was lucky. Others said she was foolish. The Ocean Pearl Hotel was strict about boundaries. Guests and staff were never supposed to blur those lines. But Luna didn't care about gossip. For her, those quiet exchanges with Mr. KT weren't just part of work. They were part of healing. One afternoon, as she was refilling her cleaning supplies, the hotel manager, Mr. Harlan, called her into his office. His tone was sharp, his expression cold. "Luna," he said, "I don't know what you think you're doing up there, but that man isn't your friend. He's not someone you should be familiar with." Luna frowned. "I only clean his room, sir. That's all." He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Do you know who he is? That man could buy this entire hotel twice over. People like him, they don't see us. We're invisible to them, and if he decides he doesn't like something, you'll lose more than your job. Do you understand?" Luna nodded silently, but her chest tightened. She wanted to say that he did see her, that for the first time in years someone looked at her as more than just a uniform. But she swallowed her words. There was no point arguing with people who never believed in small miracles. That evening, when she went to the 8th floor again, her hands trembled slightly as she knocked on the door. The room was empty, but a new paper crane waited on the desk. It was red, bold, different from all the rest. On its wings were written 3 words, "Don't be afraid." Luna sat down, her eyes glistening. Somehow he knew. Somehow he always knew. The manager's warning, the rumors, the fear, all of it faded for a moment. She folded her own crane from a scrap of paper and left it beside his. On hers she wrote, "I'm not." And as she left, she could have sworn she heard soft music playing behind her. The sound of hope, fragile but alive. The days that followed felt like walking on the edge of a dream. Luna continued her quiet routine, cleaning, polishing, smiling politely, but her mind lived on the 8th floor. Every morning she hoped to find another crane, another note, another sign that their silent bond was still alive. And every morning she did. But with each message, the air around room 801 grew heavier, as though the walls were beginning to absorb the weight of everything left unsaid. Mr. KT was a man of strange habits. He never ordered food from the hotel kitchen, preferring to prepare simple meals himself: rice, miso soup, green tea. He never used the spa, gym, or lounge like other wealthy guests. He spent most of his time sitting near the window, staring out at the city skyline. Sometimes Luna caught glimpses of him from the hallway, his silhouette framed against the glass, still as stone, as if waiting for something that would never come. The other staff found it unsettling. "He's weird," Rosa whispered one night. "Who stays in a hotel for weeks and barely talks to anyone?" Luna smiled softly. "Maybe he just wants peace." Rosa raised an eyebrow. Peace or hiding? The word hiding stuck in Luna's mind like a thorn. One evening, when she arrived on the 8th floor, she noticed something unusual. 2 men in dark suits standing near the elevator. They weren't part of the hotel staff. Their eyes were cold, scanning the hallway like security cameras. When Luna passed them, one of them nodded stiffly, as if acknowledging her presence but not her worth. She felt a chill crawl up her spine. Inside room 801, the atmosphere was tense. The desk was cluttered for the first time. Open papers, a half-packed suitcase, the faint scent of cigarette smoke. Mr. KT stood by the table, folding another paper crane, his hands moving slower than usual. Luna hesitated at the door. "Sir, are you all right?" she asked softly. He didn't answer at first. His eyes were distant, lost in a world only he could see. Finally, he said, "Do you believe people can run away from their past, Miss Luna?" The question caught her off guard. "Maybe not run away," she said after a pause. "But maybe they can learn to walk beside it without fear." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "You speak like someone much older than you are." "I've lived many small lives," she replied gently. He nodded as though her words made perfect sense. Then he placed the paper crane on the desk. It was white, but this time, instead of a message, there was a name written inside one wing. Ayumi. Luna's breath caught. It was the name she'd seen once on a small tag attached to the framed photo. The little girl's name. He noticed her eyes on the crane and said quietly, "My daughter." The room seemed to freeze. Luna wanted to say something, anything, but the sadness in his voice silenced her. "She was 6, he continued, staring at the crane as though it might turn back time. "Loved birds, colors, stories, and rain. She died in an accident 2 years ago. I was supposed to pick her up from school that day. I was late. I was in a meeting and another deal, another number. I thought there would always be more time." His voice broke slightly on the last word. Luna felt her throat tighten. She wanted to reach out to say that she understood. Not his pain exactly, but the emptiness it left behind. "I started folding cranes after her funeral," he said softly. 1,000 for peace. "I'm on number 993. Luna looked at the paper crane in his hand, delicate, trembling between his fingers. "And when you reach 1,000? She asked. He gave a faint, sad smile. "Maybe then I can stop pretending to be alive." The words hit her like a gust of cold wind. She stepped forward instinctively. "Don't say that," she whispered. "You are alive. You're breathing, you're feeling, you're still folding cranes. That means something." He looked at her for a long time as if searching for the truth in her eyes. Then he said, "You remind me of her. Not because you look alike, but because you still believe the world is kind." Luna lowered her gaze, her heart aching. "Sometimes," she said softly. "It's easier to be kind than to be strong." There was silence between them, not uncomfortable but heavy with emotion. He poured 2 cups of tea and offered one to her. It was the first time he'd ever done something so personal. She accepted it with trembling hands. As they sat there, Luna noticed faint scars across his knuckles, as if his hands had known both creation and destruction. She wanted to ask about them, but she didn't. Some questions are too sacred to touch. After a while, he stood and walked to the window. "They'll come for me soon," he murmured. "Who?" Luna asked quietly. He didn't answer. Instead, he pressed his hand against the glass, watching the city lights flicker like distant stars. People who think money makes them gods, he said finally. People I once trusted. Luna didn't fully understand, but fear coiled in her chest. Are you in danger? He turned to her, his expression calm, almost serene. We are all in danger, Miss Luna. Some of us just realize it later than others. The next morning, Luna noticed more security men stationed on the 8th floor. Guests whispered about a powerful man under protection, but protection from what or whom no one seemed to know. That day, when Luna cleaned the suite, she found something new beside the wooden box of cranes, a letter unsealed. It was written in Japanese, but a single English line stood out near the bottom. Forgive me, Ayumi. She closed her eyes, pressing the paper to her chest. For the first time, she realized that maybe Mr. KT hadn't come to the Ocean Pearl to rest. Maybe he'd come to disappear. As Luna left the room, she paused by the door and whispered into the quiet air, I forgive you. She didn't know if he heard her. But as she walked down the hall, she noticed one last crane on the floor near the threshold. It was gold, the color of farewell. The morning after their last conversation, Luna woke up earlier than usual. Her chest felt heavy with something she couldn't name, a strange mix of dread and hope. She dressed quickly, tied her hair back, and crossed the street toward the Ocean Pearl Hotel. The air outside smelled like rain, thick and restless, as if the sky was warning her that something was about to change. When she arrived, the lobby was unusually quiet. No chatter, no laughter, no sound of luggage wheels rolling across the floor. Even the fountain in the center seemed to have slowed its rhythm. Rosa was standing by the reception desk, her face pale. You heard? She whispered. Luna frowned. Heard what? The man in 801, Rosa said, glancing around nervously. He's gone, Luna froze. Gone? What do you mean? Left, packed up sometime during the night. No one saw him leave. The guard said he slipped out before dawn. The words didn't make sense. Gone, just like that? After everything they'd shared, the notes, the cranes, the confessions, he couldn't have just disappeared without a word. Luna didn't even respond. She just turned and rushed toward the elevator, her pulse quickening with every passing floor. When she reached the top, the hallway looked untouched. The 2 security men were gone. The golden lamp still glowed faintly, but the silence was different now, colder, emptier. Room 801's door was open, just a crack. Luna pushed it slowly. The suite was stripped bare. The tea set was gone, the window curtains drawn. The desk that once held hundreds of folded cranes now sat empty, except for one. A single unfinished paper crane lay open on the desk, half folded, its wings incomplete. Luna walked over and touched it gently, her fingers trembling. Beside it was a small envelope with her name written in neat handwriting. Luna. She tore it open with shaking hands. Inside was a short letter written in ink that seemed rushed, smudged at the corners. Luna, you brought light into a room that had forgotten what warmth felt like. I do not deserve your kindness, but I am grateful for it. You reminded me of Ayumi, not because you share her face, but because you share her heart. I have to leave. There are debts the soul cannot repay, but I must try. If I do not return, please remember, every crane I folded was a prayer, and every word we shared was peace I thought I'd lost. KT, tears blurred Luna's vision as she finished reading. The edges of the paper trembled in her hands. She looked around the empty room as if expecting him to step out from the shadows and tell her it was all a mistake, that he wasn't really gone, but there was only silence. Then she noticed something else, the small wooden box that had always sat on the shelf. It was still there, half open. Inside were the remaining cranes, and all 999 of them. Blue, red, white, gold, folded with care and love. But one space was empty, the final crane. That was the moment Luna understood. He had left the last crane for her. The 1,000th wish was not his, and it was hers to make. She didn't know where he had gone or whether he was still alive. But she knew deep in her heart that some goodbyes aren't endings, they're transformations. The silent guest had come into her life like a shadow and left her with wings. And as Luna closed the door to room 801 for the last time, a single paper crane fluttered from the desk, carried by a soft gust of wind, soaring upward, out the window, toward the morning sky. 3 days passed since the room on the 8th floor went silent. Luna continued her work, though her hands moved slower, her thoughts heavier. The Ocean Pearl Hotel felt emptier without him. as if the corridors themselves mourned his absence. The cranes she had hidden in her apron pocket were the only reminders that he had been real at all. Sometimes when she passed the top floor, she imagined hearing the faint sound of soft Japanese music, or seeing his silhouette by the window again. But it was only her heart replaying memories she wasn't ready to let go of. Then came the morning that changed everything. It was Sunday, a rare day off. Luna sat in her small apartment sipping black coffee that had gone cold long ago. The radio played softly in the background, the news anchor's voice dull and distant. She wasn't really listening until one name pierced through the static. Japanese billionaire and philanthropist Kaito Tanaka was found dead in Tokyo yesterday evening. Authorities report an apparent heart attack in his private residence. The cup slipped from Luna's hand and shattered on the floor. Coffee splashed across her bare feet, but she didn't feel it. The only thing she could hear was the sound of her heartbeat, uneven, echoing, breaking. She turned up the radio. The reporter continued. Mr. Tanaka, age 54, was known for his investments in global technology and for founding the Ayumi Foundation, named after his late daughter who passed away 2 years ago. In a statement released this morning, his company described him as a man of deep compassion but quiet sorrow. His final public appearance was over a month ago, before he withdrew from all business activities. Luna sank to the floor. Tears blurred her vision. Ayumi Foundation, his daughter, quiet sorrow. Everything made sense now. His silence, his solitude, his 1,000 cranes. She covered her face with trembling hands. No, she whispered, her voice barely audible. You promised peace. You weren't supposed to. The words dissolved into sobs. The pain she felt wasn't just grief. It was the hollow ache of unfinished stories, of goodbyes that came too soon. When she finally gathered the strength to move, she went to her desk drawer and pulled out the golden crane, the one she had folded for him. Its wings gleamed faintly under the light. She held it close to her chest and whispered, You found peace, didn't you? Later that day, she walked to the hotel. Rosa met her in the corridor, eyes soft with sympathy. I heard the news, she said quietly. So it was him. The man from 801, Luna nodded. She couldn't speak. Mr. Harland, the manager, stopped her as she passed. Luna, he said, his voice lower than usual. A letter came for you this morning. It was sent from Japan, her breath caught. For me? He handed her a white envelope, stamped with Japanese characters. The handwriting was familiar, careful, elegant. Luna clutched it tightly and hurried outside before her tears could fall again. She sat on the hotel stone steps and opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a single page written in English. Miss Luna, if you are reading this, it means I have gone where cranes fly freely. I left something for you, a gift not of wealth but of meaning. Enclosed with my lawyer, you will find instructions. I wanted to thank you for being kind to a stranger who had forgotten how to live. You gave me peace in silence and warmth in your words. You reminded me that the world still has gentle souls. Please do not mourn me. Live for me instead. Kaito Tanaka. Luna's tears fell silently onto the page, blurring the ink slightly. Her hands shook, but she smiled through the ache. You found peace, she whispered again, and you gave some of it to me. She folded the letter carefully and placed it inside the wooden box of cranes she'd kept hidden beneath her bed. That night she opened her window wide and lined the paper birds along the sill. The wind caught them one by one, lifting them gently into the night sky. And as they fluttered upward, hundreds of tiny wings dancing against the stars, Luna whispered a prayer. For peace. For him. For all who have lost their way. For a moment, she thought she saw something, a faint glow in the distance, shaped like a man standing beneath the moon smiling, surrounded by paper cranes. Then the vision faded, leaving only the sound of the night breeze, calm, endless, and free. A week passed after the news of Mr. Kaito Tanaka's death, but his presence lingered everywhere Luna went, in the quiet corners of the hotel, in the folded cranes that still rested near her window, and in the ache that refused to leave her chest. She moved through her days as if wrapped in fog. The world carried on. Guests came and went. Rosa kept gossiping. The manager barked orders. But Luna felt as though she were walking through someone else's life. Then, one gray morning, as rain streaked down the lobby windows, a man in a dark suit entered the hotel. He looked out of place, calm, precise. carrying an air of importance that made the staff straighten their postures instantly. His shoes clicked softly on the marble floor as he approached the front desk. "Miss Luna?" he asked, his voice smooth, deliberate, accented slightly by Japanese. She turned, startled. "Yes, that's me." He offered a polite bow and handed her a sealed envelope. "My name is Kenji Mori. I was Mr. Tanaka's attorney." The sound of that name, Tanaka, made her heart skip. She gestured for him to sit, but he shook his head. "I will not take much of your time. Mr. Tanaka left something in his will addressed specifically to you." Luna blinked in disbelief. "To me, that must be a mistake." "I'm just a hotel maid?" he interrupted gently. "He spoke of you differently." Luna's throat tightened. The lawyer handed her the envelope and stepped back respectfully. He instructed that this be delivered 1 week after his passing. Her hands trembled as she broke the seal. Inside was a letter written in Mr. Tanaka's familiar hand. Careful, elegant, deeply human. "Dear Luna, I told you once that I was on my 993rd crane. You finished the 1000th for me. That means you completed my prayer. I had planned before leaving the world to fulfill one more promise, to give light where darkness lives. I've arranged for you to receive a full scholarship to the Kyoto Art Institute through the Ayumi Foundation. It was my daughter's dream to study art. I believe it should now live through you. Do not thank me. You already gave me what money never could, one in peace. Fold your own cranes now, Luna. Let them fly for dreams, not for sorrow. Kaito Tanaka." Luna covered her mouth as tears poured freely down her cheeks. A scholarship to Japan, to his homeland, to Ayumi's dream. She could barely breathe. "I can't accept this," she whispered. Mr. Mori smiled softly. "You already have." It was his last request. He bowed once more before leaving her standing there with the letter pressed against her heart. The rain outside had stopped and sunlight broke through the clouds, spilling golden light across the lobby floor. For the first time in days, Luna lifted her face toward it and smiled. That night, she visited room 801 once more. It had already been cleaned and reassigned, but she stood there alone for a few moments, listening to the silence. Then she whispered, "I'll go, Mr. Tanaka. I'll learn. I'll make something beautiful. For you, for her, for me." She left a single paper crane on the windowsill before closing the door. Her first new one, folded not from grief, but from hope. Its wings were painted with blue watercolor, and on them she wrote, "For new beginnings." When she returned home, she packed her few belongings, a sketchbook, her mother's necklace, and the wooden box filled with cranes. As she zipped her bag, the wind outside picked up, scattering a few paper birds across her floor. Luna laughed softly through her tears. It felt like the world was answering her, telling her to go. 3 weeks later, Luna boarded a plane for Japan. As it lifted into the clouds, she looked out the window and whispered, "We're flying, Mr. Tanaka, just like your cranes." Below her, the ocean shimmered like liquid glass. Above her, sunlight broke through the clouds. And somewhere beyond both, in a place no map could mark, Luna liked to imagine a man and a little girl watching her, smiling, surrounded by 1,000 white cranes soaring endlessly through the sky. Japan greeted Luna with a silence she had never known before, not the silence of emptiness but of peace. The air felt gentler, the rain softer, as if even the sky there moved with purpose. When she stepped out of the train at Kyoto Station, she paused for a moment, breathing in the scent of wet earth and cherry blossoms. She had never been so far from home, yet somehow she didn't feel lost. It was as though every crane she and Mr. Tanaka had folded had flown ahead of her, clearing the path. The Ayumi Foundation's representative, a kind elderly woman named Mrs. Sato, met her with a warm bow and a smile. "You are Luna," she said softly, her accent lilting. "Mr. Tanaka spoke of you in his final letter to us. He said, 'She reminded me of kindness itself.'" Luna's throat tightened. "He spoke about me?" Mrs. Sato nodded, very fondly. "He said your kindness brought light into a dark season of his life." They drove through quiet streets lined with maple trees, until the car stopped in front of a modest yet beautiful house built in traditional Japanese style. The wooden panels glowed in the sunlight, and a small koi pond rippled gently by the entrance. "This was Mr. Tanaka's residence," Mrs. Sato explained. "He requested that you visit before beginning your studies." Luna's heartbeat quickened as she stepped through the wooden gate. The interior smelled faintly of sandalwood and paper, just like room 801. Every sound and the creak of the floorboards, the whisper of wind through the shoji screens, felt like a memory reborn. In the main room, sunlight spilled across a wall of paintings. They weren't the polished works of a collector, but the raw, emotional strokes of someone painting from his soul. One canvas in particular caught her breath. It was unfinished, soft and luminous. It showed a young woman with dark skin and bright eyes holding an origami crane. Behind her, 1,000 cranes filled the sky, forming the faint outline of a little girl's smile. Luna stepped closer, trembling. At the bottom of the canvas, in delicate brushstrokes, were the words, "The girl who made me believe again." Her vision blurred. She sank to her knees before the painting, covering her mouth as tears fell freely. He had painted her, not as a maid, not as a stranger, but as a symbol of hope, of rebirth, of everything he had once lost. Mrs. Sato stood quietly beside her, eyes soft. He worked on that painting until his last week. He told us it was his final piece and a promise to complete it in another life. Luna smiled through her tears. "He kept his promise," she whispered. On a nearby table rested a small wooden box, identical to the one from the hotel. Mrs. Sato nodded for her to open it. Inside were a few folded paper cranes and a short note written in Japanese. She handed it to Mrs. Sato, who translated softly, "When she finds this, tell her she was never invisible." The words struck Luna deeper than she could bear. She had spent her entire life feeling unseen, by the world, by fate, by herself. But here, across oceans and languages, someone had seen her soul clearly enough to immortalize it on canvas. That evening, Luna stood in the garden, watching the koi fish ripple through the pond. She unfolded her sketchbook, the one she'd carried since her mother's death, and began to draw. Not the sadness this time, not the grief. She drew the cranes, the sunlight, the man by the window, and the little girl in his memory. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, she had filled the page. Her drawing was imperfect, but it was alive. And for the first time, Luna didn't feel like she was drawing to escape life. She was drawing because of it. As she looked up, a soft wind stirred the trees. One of the paper cranes from the open box lifted into the air, spinning gently before landing in her palm. Its wings fluttered once, then stilled. Luna smiled. "You're still watching, aren't you?" she whispered, and for a moment in the fading light, she could almost see him. Mr. Tanaka standing beside Ayumi beneath a sky full of cranes, both smiling as if to say, "Well done." Months passed, but the memory of Mr. Kaito Tanaka never faded. In Kyoto, Luna immersed herself in the world he had gifted her. Art. Every morning she painted and sketched cranes, sunlight, oceans, and quiet faces. Every brush stroke felt like a conversation with the man who had once sat in room 801, speaking silently through folded paper and whispered prayers. His presence had become the invisible thread weaving through her life, connecting grief to hope, sorrow to purpose. One spring morning, the Ayumi Foundation organized a small exhibition to honor her work. The gallery was modest but bathed in natural light, the walls lined with her drawings and paintings, cranes in flight, luminous skies, and faces drawn from memory and imagination. Each piece told a story of loss, remembrance, and transformation. Rosa, who had flown to Kyoto to support her, clutched Luna's hand as they walked among the guests. "Look at this," Rosa whispered. "They're beautiful. Every one of them feels alive." Luna nodded, though her throat was tight. She felt alive, but differently now. Not in the ordinary sense, but in the sense of someone who had been touched by grace and chose to carry it forward. She stepped in front of the largest painting, the one she had first seen in Mr. Tanaka's home, "The Girl Who Made Me Believe Again." A hush fell over the room. People moved closer, eyes wide. Luna's voice, quiet yet steady, filled the space. "This painting, and all the art here, are not just mine. They are gifts from someone who believed that even one person's kindness can change a life. A man I never truly knew, but who trusted me enough to let me see the world through his eyes, even for a moment. He left me a choice to mourn or to create. I chose to create." The audience listened, captivated, sensing the emotion behind each word. Tears glistened in Luna's eyes, but she smiled, remembering the first paper crane she had folded for him, and the 1,000th one he had left for her to complete. After the exhibition, Luna stepped onto the balcony overlooking Kyoto's quiet streets. The evening sky was streaked with pink and gold. She released a handful of paper cranes she had folded over the past months. They caught the breeze, fluttered, and soared high above the rooftops, small wings against the vast sky, carrying her prayers, her memories, and her gratitude. She whispered softly, as if speaking to him across time and space, "We did it. Mr. Tanaka." We let the cranes fly. A gentle wind brushed against her face. For a brief moment she imagined him standing there, watching her, surrounded by the soft glow of countless cranes. She smiled, not with sadness, but with the quiet satisfaction of someone who had been seen, understood, and transformed. The next morning, Luna returned to her studio. A fresh sheet of paper lay on the desk waiting. She picked up her pencil and began to draw, not as a girl who worked in a hotel nor as a visitor from another world, but as an artist who had been entrusted with a story greater than herself. Each stroke was deliberate, tender, and alive. With every crane she folded and painted, she felt closer to him, closer to Ayumi, and closer to the person she had always been, waiting to emerge. In her heart, Luna carried one final truth. Life may bring moments of loss and heartbreak, but it also offers unexpected gifts, a kindness, a smile, a silent gesture that can lift the heaviest soul. And sometimes the most powerful voices are not spoken aloud, but folded quietly into wings that soar beyond sight, carrying hope wherever they land. The gallery, the city, the cranes. They were no longer just objects or memories. They were proof that love, gratitude, and courage could transform a fleeting connection into something eternal. And Luna, once a quiet, small girl who felt unseen, had finally discovered her place in the world, not as a servant, not as an observer, but as a creator, a witness, and a bearer of light. As she looked out at the sunset, she whispered one last time, "Thank you, Kaito Tanaka. Thank you for believing, for trusting, for showing me how to fly." And with that, the paper cranes she had folded over the years drifted into the sky, hundreds of wings glinting gold in the fading light, a silent army of hope, remembrance, and the promise of new beginnings. Luna smiled, feeling him beside her, not as a shadow, not as a ghost, but as a presence that would always guide her. In every fold, every stroke, and every breath she took, the story ended. Yet in the sky above Kyoto, the cranes continued their endless flight, carrying the whisper of a man who had once been silent, and the girl who had learned to speak through her art. End of the story. Thanks for listening the story. Subscribe my channel to listen more stories.